Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to Kate. So she is one of my favorite humans in the world. I'm not one of hers, but that's okay. But I'm excited for this part of the conversation because as I talk about being able to bring resources in to help maintain tenants, it's the partnership that we started between Canyon Creek and Care and Share 5.5 years ago that's been able to help me look to bring all these resources in. And it's been awesome. So one, she's an awesome person. Two, it's a great organization. And three, you get to listen to her try to mock me for 20 minutes. So, which is always entertaining. I'm sure many of you guys have wanted that too. So with that introduction, Kate, have at it.
Oh man. Let me figure out my screen orientation here because Zoom is just such a fun time and it's not what I'm used to all the time. So we're gonna do it. It's gonna be fine. Hello to all of you. My name's Kait Sorensen. Like Derek said, well, most of what Derek said isn't extremely true about me. He is definitely one of my favorite people as well. And he is a great support system. And I think friendships and business partnerships between nonprofits and social workers and individuals in the housing business is a little bit of a strange coincidence, but it has definitely, I think, taught us a lot about ways that we can partner and do things better and differently. So the reason I am here today is to kind of highlight why partnerships like the one that NetGain has with Canyon Creek Services, and I'll talk about what we do in just a minute, are extremely beneficial to property owners, to the community in general, and maybe just kind of give you something to chew on or think about as you are making decisions with the way that you rent out your properties in the future. So we have a real fancy title: Rich Opportunities, Poverty Interventions Today, and Homeowners Tomorrow. And like I said, I'm a social worker. It's what I do every day. So I'm a real big, bleeding heart people person. So that is my whole entire existence and purview. And so you're going to notice that as we go through, and it's just a little bit different. Derek and I come to terms with different worldviews all the time. So like I said, I'm Kait Sorensen. I have been the executive director at Canyon Creek for a year, but I have run a variety of programs here, and I've been with the organization for almost a decade now. So I'm very familiar with Iron County, Cedar City, and I'm happy to be here. If I can find my mouse here. So who is Canyon Creek? What do we do? How is this relevant to you guys? We are a 501c3 nonprofit that serves survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault and engages the community in prevention work. So everything that we do as an agency is free and confidential, and it's really centered on making sure that our communities are free of domestic violence and sexual assault. And we've been able to kind of luckily transition into some higher level type of work, including what we've been doing with NetGain over the last few years. So I've got a fun video here that kind of gives you a rundown of what our services are. And I'm going to really hope that the sound works well. Well, it thinks. Can everyone hear that okay? Thumbs up. Uh-oh. Dang it, here I was thinking that we had all the things figured out. Let's see.
Doesn't seem to be working on my end, and it looks really choppy.
Really choppy. Dang it. Let's see. Well, I don't know, Rochelle, do you guys have any feedback on if there has been anything like this?
You're the lucky one, Kate.
I'm the
When-
lucky one.
Okay,
All
when you
right.
select to share, optimize for video, bottom right on your select to share.
Hey, yeah. Okay, hold on a second. Gonna stop share. I'm gonna reshare. Screen one. Optimize for video. Oh, hey, share sound.
There you go.
Oh, it says it won't let me click optimize for video clip, but it will let me share sound. So I'll turn my video off of me and then see if that will help my internet here. So 1 second.
So at Canyon Creek Services, we offer free and confidential support for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault via our 24/7 emergency hotline or with our advocates that are assigned to anyone that comes through our services or requests help.
So obviously we do have our emergency shelter, but each client is assigned an advocate, and what we do is we help them process with whatever they need, if they need resources. So like if they need help finding a job or building a resume, like we'll do stuff like that. We also help file protective orders with the courts and stalking injunctions if needed. And if they have any other needs, then we will do our best to try to provide those resources.
Creek Services Shelter is an emergency shelter for those who are fleeing domestic violence, rape, and sexual assault. It's a 24/7 shelter that's fully staffed at all times. We work very hard to maintain a clean facility that is well stocked with food and all the necessities that one would need. We have several clients that come in at times where they're wearing just nothing but the clothes on their backs. And they're hungry and tired and they're scared. So what we do is we embrace them and let them know that they're safe, and we have them covered. We have a nice, clean, warm bed for them, great food, and resources to help them start over with what they need.
Working at the shelter is a very rewarding as well as eye-opening experience. This is one of the hardest times in their lives that they're going through, and a lot of the times just the small things that I do to help them out around the shelter, like cleaning, keeping it safe and sanitary for everyone, as well as like doing the shopping for groceries, and even just being an open ear for them to talk to, make all the difference for them.
So one of the services that we provide is responding to the hospital after someone has experienced sexual assault. So if a survivor decides to go to the hospital or the emergency room for medical attention, the hospital will call Canyon Creek, and one of our advocates can meet the survivor at the hospital to kind of be someone to answer any questions they have, let them know their rights, and be a confidential person that they can talk to. And it's really, really important to be able to provide that safe space for the survivors. And as an advocate, I see myself as being that person who creates the safe space, who answers their questions and lets them know that they're not alone through this process. And it's just a really great thing that we do, and I think our survivors really appreciate it.
The purpose of the housing division is to get people housed in stable, affordable housing that's safe for them. We often continue to help them mediate between the landlord and them, so any other occurrences that happen, they don't get evicted. They're able to stay there.
We also have advocates on our team that specialize in serving children and teen victims, human trafficking survivors, and Spanish-speaking victims.
You're not alone.
You are important beyond measure.
Choose you. Choose you first.
You deserve to be happy.
You're so brave for stepping up, and you will always be believed by Canyon Creek.
We're here to help anytime, day or night.
Okay, well, if the video streaming wasn't a wonderful quality, hopefully you were able to kind of hear about what we do. Other than that, you can always find us in this video on YouTube under Canyon Creek Services. We've got a variety of different videos that talk about the services that we provide, primary prevention, those kinds of things. If you're bored and need something to watch, there you go. Oh, whoops, I'll watch it again.
So Canyon
Okay.
Creek Service.
So our nonprofit itself, we operate with about a $1.8 million annual budget. So we've grown significantly over the past decade. We've been a nonprofit for 27 years. And so as you can tell, that means we have a lot of work that we've done in the community, and we still have a lot of work to do. So that's kind of where we're operating right now. Last year, we served 756 total victims at our agency, and we have 38 employees. And so that's kind of what our operation looks like at this given time. So how does this all kind of go together with net gain? I like to say it's a love story, a sibling rivalry of sorts, a learning experience, friendship, depending on if I've had enough caffeine and Derek's feeling nice. So we're just an unusual sort of partnership. But here's the facts. So a few years ago, really early on in kind of the housing coordination game here in Iron County, NetGain kind of noticed, or Derek kind of noticed, that tenants were experiencing a variety of circumstances that really he wasn't trained to provide any kind of resources for, domestic violence, maybe drug use, lots of individuals experiencing poverty, those kinds of things. And he wanted to make sure that they could get connected to those resources. So he is great at reaching out and finding opportunities for those resources and connections to kind of come together. And that is how we got connected. He has worked with and housed many of our clients. It kind of started with sober living spaces, some transitional housing properties. And now we are hopefully coming towards the end of getting our $6 million grant property for deeply affordable units, some fair market rate units, and just a really exciting and one of a kind projects throughout the entire country. So when we submitted this grant between the Care and Share, who is the homeless service provider, ourselves, who they consider a domestic violence provider, and a property management company coming together to do, run this apartment complex and set aside units for these specific types of needs, this kind of wraparound support. The feedback we received was like, we're so excited to see how you guys are going to do this, because people are just really struggling to find those kinds of connections other places. And it's really just kind of worked out really well here. And we have a wonderful group of people who are committed to finding solutions. And so we are right in the thick of getting that all settled, and we're really excited about it. But the relationship kind of paved a way for more than just our agency providing housing assistance by way of, rental assistance for individuals that are transitioning out of our shelter, or potentially that we're relocating from an abusive environment to home, a rental for the first time on their own. But it kind of became a partnership where we started focusing on the larger picture. How do we help our community have more stable housing outcomes? How do we affect policy and change? How do we give each other feedback about the experiences from all points of view to kind of like not just have to keep responding to the issue itself, but making it better for everyone involved. And that's been a really exciting thing for us. So that's how it all came together. I have the chat up, but if you need to stop me, ask any questions, let me know. So I'm sure you're sitting here wondering, why should we care? This is not necessarily like super applicable to me that I can see. But strategies that we've implemented in this partnership lead to better tenant outcomes. which leads to better outcomes for property owners. And that's you. So let's kind of walk through what I mean when I talk about those outcomes. So when you have better outcomes with your tenants, that can mean that you have better mitigation for unexpected costs. If I put out to the group, I came on and you were talking about a garbage disposal, and from what I understand, was probably the tenant's fault that the garbage disposal was not working. But I would assume that some of you have even come upon other unexpected costs. Maybe you had a domestic violence incident at your property where there was damage to the property. Maybe you had drug use. Maybe you've had just like basic neglect of the property and had to like do a ton of cleaning work or whatever that might be. I'm sure if I put that out there, many of you would probably say, yeah, I've experienced some of that, or I've gotten a call from Derek at some point that was not a fun call to get. And that's just sometimes kind of what happens with rentals. Sometimes that occurs. But partnerships like the one that we have, and being connected to the resources like ours, we can sometimes help mitigate those costs. And so you'll have housing agencies like us, the Housing Authority, the Care and Share, other places that I'll share with you later on, who we have access to grant funds or access to apply for grant funds that can kind of sometimes mitigate some of those barriers that come up, to be able to make it a more enjoyable experience for you as property owners, as well as for the renters themselves, because grants really want to see us housing people that remain housed, get stable, and are able to have successful outcomes and become what some would call, you know, productive members of society, or however they want to term that. So they're really invested in saying, if we need to put some money towards being able to keep individuals housed and lessening the burden on landlords, then we're going to do that. The thing about it is that we are not landlords. We're not the ones renting property. And so being able to have a connection with this property management company and those partnerships means that we're able to get that feedback to say, like, what kinds of damage are you seeing? Like, what kinds of funds should we be applying for to help mitigate? An example of that was, it was probably a couple of years ago, maybe last year, time is weird. We were able to kind of help with a meth cleanup situation that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And we were able to cover that through a grant because we knew we needed to be able to get access and apply for resources with our status that could mitigate those costs, so that we would, you know, be able to say, like, property management companies aren't saying, oh, no, if you have anything to do with, you got a messy relationship, we don't want anything to do with you. So these kinds of relationships, we can help with those unexpected costs. Also, it can help reduce your eviction rates. So lower eviction rates means that there's less risk to property because there's more intervention kind of upfront, less legal costs. Evictions, they take time and resources for everyone involved, and they're not pleasant. They're just not a pleasant experience. And when tenants are connected with the proper resources, it is much less likely that things are going to end in an eviction or even get up or close to that point. Usually we can intervene and get some positive strategies in place before then. And I apologize, you might hear a lot of noises around me. We are a busy office right now. We're planning a candlelight vigil for a tragedy that I'm sure many of you are familiar with that happened in our community last week. And so we're all hands on deck. So I apologize, you're gonna hear some things, hang with me. Anyway, so lower eviction rates, and also contributing to stable housing and poverty reduction. It can raise the economic kind of level around the community that you're in. So if you have individuals who are able to sustain housing longer, kind of get themselves out of that poverty cycle and situation, then they are going to become more, like we said, contributing members of society that are able to potentially own homes at some point, get, higher paying jobs. And that will directly affect over time that property values throughout the community. When you're able to kind of lift people out of it, then your whole community sees that impact. Poverty doesn't just cost those that are impoverished, it costs all of the entities, healthcare, housing, mental health resources, law enforcement, all of those types of things have a cost associated with it. And Iron County, unfortunately, has one of the highest poverty rates in the state. And so it's just a reality that if you have a property here that's being rented, odds are that people who are renting that can't purchase a home might have some of those barriers, that making sure that they have resources and access to resources up front is going to make sure that that relationship has a higher chance of being successful. Rochelle, because we changed our timing, I want to make sure I don't go over. What time do you need me to end?
You got about 7 minutes.
Wonderful. All right, strategies. So how can I, as an owner, help tenants have better outcomes without spending more of my own time and money, right? We got to be reasonable here. Know your resources. So make sure you know what resources you have in your area. Know about agencies like ours that may have access to things that can solve a problem quicker than it will take you or Derek to run around for a day to figure out how to actually make something happen. And that's why that relationship is great. Derek has no fear in calling or texting me anytime, day or night. I have the same relationship to say, hey, we have got this going on. Do you know of anything? How can we get this fixed? And it's usually really quick. Know how you will respond and determine your boundaries. So think about how some of what we're talking about might change your process, or how you might view being open to renters who come in with maybe a grant resource that's assisting with some of their rent, or potentially like housing vouchers. I will tell you that individuals that are connected to those kinds of resources, they're also connected to case management. They probably have requirements they have to meet for the grant, where they're meeting with a social worker, potentially a therapist. People are reviewing their finances, budgeting with them. They're engaged in their lives, and so they have a lot of supportive measures in place. So decide maybe if that's something you haven't considered. Does that change how you might allow people to rent in those properties? Does it change what you might put in your leases or requirements that you might have for individuals in those situations? So decide what your limits are, what you're comfortable with, test the water. Derek can help you kind of ease into that if that's something that you're interested in doing. And then make sure, no matter what, I think set everyone up for success. Even your renters that you're not concerned about or don't come with a grant program. I think we've learned in the last week that anything can happen to anybody, especially domestic violence from our standpoint, which can cause a lot of harm. It can cause a lot of property damage, costs, lots of issues with leases, those kinds of things. So sure that you have educational materials for people who are renting your property. Know your resources. We have a master resource list. And I don't know if I switch my tab here. Can you see this spreadsheet? Somebody nod, yes or no? Maybe not. We have a massive resource spreadsheet that's about 20 tabs long of like any resource that you can possibly imagine, because of the things that we work with. Anything from pet information, animal hospitals, education about leases, all of those kinds of things, we collect that information. So if you're aware of the types of nonprofits or resources in your community, rental assistance types, deposit assistance types, then having that accessible to tenants up and coming in, if they come upon a hard time, will really make a difference for them. A good way to kind of do this might be to make a list of issues that you've experienced while renting a property, and then do some research, or ask an agency like ours, send me an email to see if I know of any resources available for those kinds of circumstances. And I bet you in most cases, I've probably got something that can help. And then decide how you're going to make that resource information available. Is that a resource list attached to the lease? Is there a newsletter that goes out with your property management company? Is there a magnet on your fridge? All of the fridges that have like important numbers to know having a hard time paying your rent this month. Here's some things you might want to consider. Are you safe in your house? Here's a phone number you can call. Those kinds of things. So some action items you can do. We could talk about this for hours, and I told them I could do that for hours, but we'll try and wrap up as quickly as we can. But you can subscribe to updates on local resources through email, social media, and encourage your tenants to do the same. So especially while we were going through COVID and you had all of these programs popping up, and money was just being pumped into housing, specifically poverty reduction, those kinds of things. If you're subscribing to like the Paiute tribe, they have a lot of housing resources, or did during COVID. Us, other places, we share that information to our email list on our social media so that people know that it's accessible. Create a communication mechanism about resources. If you hand that over to Derek and just say, hey, I want people to have X, Y, and Z on our property, we can help make that happen. Make sure that it's accessible, and then ask resources to send materials to include maybe in a rental packet. Agencies like ours, we can send cards, we can send magnets, we can send pamphlets. We can get, you could make like your own little packet of how to be a successful renter. Here's a list of just a couple of the resources here in Iron County that have financial assistance available for certain things. Maybe this stuff I can send out and can email this stuff to you guys, but the last thing I will touch base on is, in order to set everyone up for success, some additional action steps I would recommend is provide information on tenants' rights to tenants and become familiar with them yourself. That keeps you out of a lawsuit, keeps your tenant doing what they should be doing as a renter, and make sure they're clear on their lease requirements. And that can kind of double ensure that there's no way they could have misunderstood something. It can also lead to better outcomes, less time managing issues and crisis. That's what we want to avoid. Banks have a ton of renter information. The Tenant Resource Center, Apartment Search, they all have lots of resources that like how to read a lease, resources and information. Our agency and others in town use the Renters Toolkit, which kind of is a program that helps provide information on how to be a successful tenant. It's practicing for homeownership, and so it's likely that renters are often uneducated about how to navigate those responsibilities, what that looks like. And so it really kind of helps mediate some of those concerns. And then make sure tenants know when to call the property manager. Make sure that relationship is solid. Make it easy and encouraging, or encouraged to contact them. I think Derek can agree that we want to avoid crisis at all costs. We want to avoid it getting to the point where it's unsolvable and untenable. And so having that good connection and resources available and those kinds of situations will really help in the long term have better success. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. If you're looking for resources, if you are wanting someone to kind of brainstorm some solutions to some of the issues that you've come up with, or anything about what we do, you can find me at my email address here, or you can get my cell phone number from Derek, and text or calling is great. Any questions for me in that whirlwind? Okay. Thank you guys for having me, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your conference today.
Kate, hold on. My name is Camille. I just had one question. I'm sorry, I couldn't get my mute button to come off, so I apologize. Do you handle services in northern Utah, like Davis and Weber counties as well?
We don't,
Okay.
but we do have sister programs in those areas that will have mirrored kind of resources like we do, that I can get you that contact information,
Okay,
and they can
that
help.
would be fabulous. Okay,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, thank you, Kay. Like I can attest, like once again, like I know a couple times that we've housed their tenants, and sometimes their clients, and it didn't go well, and they were able to help the owner with some of the damages. At the same time, we've been able to keep people housed while being able to work legally to remove the abuser from the property while she's still able to be housed. Like there's a lot of things, plus just sometimes like life happens. And so to be able to give them access to that resources so that we don't make their life worse as they just hit a little speed bump on the road. So like, I've absolutely loved the partnership. It has saved your properties and saved a lot of your tenants. And the thing I like and what got me involved is that she mentioned the caseworkers. So like, I have the 3 staff members and me. They have caseworkers, they have everything. So for me, you get a better experience, and we've expanded our staff to be able to better protect your property and set up the tenants for future success. So it's been awesome. So with that, now we'll move on